Limperis, hi. We regret to inform you that your car warranty has... I'm like, let me stop you right there. This is a freaky frickin' coincidence because my dad had a car. And he died of click.
Alyssa, it's nice to talk with you today.
Thanks so much.
For everyone to see No Bad Days. For anyone who's not familiar, can you just give me like a little spiel about your special and how you started it?
Yeah, for sure. So the special is at its core sort of just about loving, losing, and learning to live without my dad. The show has an overarching theme of optimism and about choosing joy in the midst of pain, which was very much my dad's MO. The show began because I moved home to live with my dad. He was super healthy and he got diagnosed with terminal brain cancer, and I went home to live with him. And once he passed away after that year, I didn't feel like I could go back to just doing comedy about whatever I was talking about before, like dating or, I don't know, airplanes. I was like, I can't do that. I just watched this crazy, horrible, beautiful thing. And so I had to talk about it. So I started talking about it and talking about losing my dad as I would say the first chapter of the show, called No Bad Days, but it was different than what you see now. And then over the years, I paused for a bit and then revisited it and started talking about what it's like on the other half, after I've lost my dad, living without him, grieving, missing him, parts that I wouldn't have known, when I first started doing the show because it was so fresh versus 6 years later, having a lot more perspective. And so the show now is sort of a combo of those two things.
I think you had mentioned in your special that you started doing the show just a few months after your dad had passed. And then now it's 6 years later, it's like such a long time to be working on this one project. But like you said, it's been evolving over time as you go. So can you tell me a little bit more about how you've been changing things up as you go through like the years and as you sort of adjust on your healing journey and turning that into your comedy journey as well?
Totally. Yeah, it is really strange to have this living thing that's been with you for 6 years, but that's changed a lot. So in the beginning, I think that it was just me reacting reacting in the most guttural sense to what I had just seen in my comedy. I'd always sort of been talking about what was going on in my life. So in a way, it just continued to be that. It's just what was going on got more intense. And then I think for a while, I did just almost pause and like live life. And then when my life again changed and when grief started coming up in a different way, that started being reflected in the special as well. That's the thing about grief. It's very unpredictable and windy because during that first chunk, I might have been more able to joke about certain things. And then 6 years later, it might be like I remember even this Christmas being at home and where my mom was selling the house and just losing it in a way that I probably hadn't the year after my dad died. So grief is really changing and evolving. And so the show moved and evolved as I grieved and changed as well.
And I think some of the things that you've addressed like a little bit here today and then a lot in your special as well is that all of these feelings like change and evolve over time. And that's also kind of how comedy works. Like when you're working on your special, like you're saying, it's sometimes like, oh, this happened to me today and I'm going to turn that into something that's funny. That's a story that I could tell everyone. But grief works in much the same way where you're like, this happened to me today, or I encountered this and all of a sudden my feelings are really different. So I think there's definitely a lot of parallels in those two, like the grief journey and creating a comedy.
Totally. Yeah, I think that's very astute. And that is how it felt. Even especially the last chapter of this show, maybe the last 10 minutes, that was changing it was crazy. It was changing every month that I was on tour because my feelings about that conclusion kept changing. So I feel lucky to get to do it because I was forced in a way to really keep reevaluating how I did feel about grief and how to look at it. And as I hint at a lot in the show, I come from Massachusetts. Feelings and talking about that isn't something that really ran deep in my family. And so even for myself, sometimes it's easier for me to shy away. And I think being thrown back into the special and doing it 5 years, 6 years after my dad died, it was a gift because it allowed me to look at my life and see where my dad still showed up and where the pain still was and the parts I still had to work on.
Now, you had mentioned that the ending had been shifting a little bit, and I did really, I mean, I don't know what the other ones were, but I really liked the ending that you landed on.
Yes.
But can you tell me a little bit about some other ways that you considered going? Why?
Oh, yes, I will say that ending that you're referencing, that has been there from day one. So that ending has always been there, and that was very important to me that always stayed. I think I end the show on a bit of a high note, and to me that's very important because it represents my dad and how he lived and died. And I think the special is a representation of my dad's journey. And so for him, he would have chosen joy at that moment. So I wanted to, but the moment before where I'm sort of where the lights go low and I'm just speaking to the audience, that's the part where it kept changing because my feelings on it kept changing. And then when I got to the final conclusion I got to, that was the one that hit me when I realized, oh, this is it. This is happening now. It's almost gone. And that's once I felt that feeling, that one never left. And so that's what I stuck with.
And so this is also, it's a time capsule in a lot of ways because it's a time capsule of like the last 6 years of your life and like what you've been going through and dealing with, which is very interesting, I'm sure, just to perform periodically like throughout the years, but also now that it has been filmed and it's going to be on Peacock, we are sort of preserving that and setting like this version of it aside. So what's that like for you? How does that feel?
Right. It's a very strange experience. It's it's a very strange experience. And I even talk about that a little in the special, just letting go of this thing that's been with me for so long is a very intense feeling. But also there's perhaps a freedom in it too, in the way that art can constantly evolve. I could probably keep evolving this show for 20 years because it would keep changing and more things would change and maybe I'd have kids and that would bring stuff up. And so I, in a way, did the show. And I remember like the next morning waking up and definitely feeling a bit of a lightness of like, oh, this chapter is done for me now. I can move forward in a way it's okay. It's there. And I've said what I want to say about it. And now maybe it's time for me to move forward in a way that felt nice.
Do you think that this is something you could personally revisit? Like that's what's always so interesting to me is that you've shared this with everybody and it's an experience that we all get to have. But would you like go back and watch yourself? And like, would that be a way to sort of revisit these feelings or like reconfront anything? Or are you like, no, it's there now and I know what happened. I'm not touching it.
Yeah, luckily the feelings are there. I think they're stuck with me. They'll come back. They're there. That's the other thing about grief. It's never too far away. So even if I'm, done with this process of it, I know that the big feelings will always be there, but it's true. It is nice that it's there. Maybe I will. I made those I don't know if you've seen, I used to make these mom videos where I impersonated my mom and my mom's now moving from this house. And the other day I found myself watching one of them just because I was like, oh, this is nice. I get to take a tour through my house. So maybe it'll be the same thing where maybe one day I'll be missing my dad or I'll be missing this time in my life and I'll give it a rewatch to remind myself of it. Yeah.
And now I know that your special is really hitting on this duality because we have a comedy, but also it's so heavily dealing with grief. And especially as a tribute to your dad, you talked about how he was such an optimist and really found the brighter side in life. That's why we've got this title, I believe, No Bad Days, and really focusing on how we can see the positive and everything. So how do you go through life sort of taking that approach now, trying to embrace that optimistic side, seeing the best in everything?
Yeah, I mean, our world makes it challenging. It's become every day in 2022. It certainly gets harder. But I think the main thing that my dad really helped me with, watching him live and die, helped me be like, no bad days doesn't mean that there aren't bad days. Optimism doesn't mean that there's not pessimism or that there's not sadness or darkness. I think it's just that they live right next to each other. And so when I find myself in a dark position or a sad place, or it doesn't mean I have to escape that sad place, but it's like, maybe there's something still in this day that I can find that's good. And I think that's a distinction that my dad helped me a lot with. It doesn't have to be everything. You don't have to my dad had really bad days, terrible days, but still within those terrible days found a nice moment. And so that's what I try to do. It's not an avoidance of bad days, but it's, if I have one, saying, what's something I can, maybe there's a walk, maybe the sky's really beautiful. Maybe I had a really freaking good coffee and it was like really good, just like one little thing, then that's him shining through. Yeah.
I love that. That's really nice. And like you said, we could really all use it now.
Yeah.
I think it's
Yeah.
a challenge for us to find those nice things.
Totally.
Start small is good advice.
Start small. Yeah.
You have this big special that you have been working on now for 6 years and evolving for 6 years. And so this comedy that you've been working on has been very much tied to your grief and your journey there. When you're looking to moving forwards, do you sort of take a similar approach? Do you want that sort of duality to always be a part of your comedy? Or is this like, here is a period of my life where it was this and now I'm moving on to another thing?
My art is often, for me, this window and this tool and this really beautiful thing I have to be able to express whatever I'm going through in life. So I think that that's always what it's going to be. And so when this happened, I had to do something with it. And this made me feel a lot better and really helped me through this journey. So I think that my art will continue to reflect my life and what I'm going through. And so often in life, there is the duality. So I'm sure that more of that will continue to exist. But also sometimes I just like my friend and I wrote a movie, and it's just a real comedy. It's just a comedy, and there's no real darkness in it. So I think that I will always have a balance of the two. But if there's something that I'm going through that is darker that I want to express, then I definitely will use art to do so.
And so thinking about that, what's next for you? What do you have in the works? What's happening for you coming up?
Okay, yes. Usually I joke, like I did this show about my dad. I do my mom videos. So like aunts and uncles, grandparents, someone, I gotta kind of find someone else in the family. Yeah. No, but my friend, May Wilkerson and I wrote a movie with 42. And so we're in development with that. I have a couple other TV shows in development, and I'm currently in Flatbush Misdemeanors season 2, playing Sydney, who is one of the leads, Dan's love interest this season. And similarly to my special, we meet in NA, Narcotics Anonymous, and I think that show does such an excellent job at balancing light and dark, having these heavy situations, addiction, and us meeting as at dark places in our lives, but still being able to laugh and treat it with some lightness and comedy. I think their show does that really well. So it was a joy to be on that show, and that's coming out as we speak.
And then we will have No Bad Days landing on Peacock very soon.
Yes, on August 12th.
So excited for everyone to go see that. I think it's unusual for a comedy special to make me laugh and cry. I can't say that that's happened to me before, so that honor belongs to you.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you for being open to it and for watching it. I appreciate it.
Of course.